My name's Mary Schmelko.
Mary Manning Schmelko.
Mary Manning Schmelko.
And so, just start out by asking you where you lived before you went to the home.
We lived in Germantown on Blakemore Street.
And where was your father working then?
My father was working in Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, digging graves.
Did a lot of Irish men work there?
Many, many. And a lot of Italians also.
Could you say a lot of Irish? A lot of the Irish were working there.
Oh, a lot of Irish worked in the cemetery.
Did his brother work there too?
Uncle Packy, yes, he did. Uh-huh.
And were they? They must have been poor.
Yes, they were. Sure they were. It was hard for Irishmen to get a job, except manual labor. So that's what they did.
And do you remember your mother?
Yes. Not too much, but I do remember. Like the presence almost. Can I talk about,
Yeah, talk about whatever comes to mind, whatever
well,
you want.
I remember the first thing I remember about my mother is we would get up in the morning, the children, of course, and Mother and Daddy would be in bed sleeping, and we used to jump on this and open their eyes with our fingers, and she would never say, oh, stop that, nothing. She was great. And I remember that my favorite memory is we used to go to the Albury Park in Germantown a lot on Sundays. And I remember her sitting beside me and teaching me how to sing A Daisy Daisy. And she was making clover necklaces for us. And I remember when I got in trouble with a lady up the street. I don't know if I hit one of her kids or what I did. And remember running, and my mother came out, and, I was hanging onto her leg. I was terrified. And the woman was screaming at my mother, and she didn't say a word, not a word. She just stood there. She said, 33. Can you imagine that, dying at 33? My God. And my poor father, who thought of it? He was 33 too when she died. That's so hard.
Do you remember how the song Daisy Daisy went?
Mm-hmm.
Could
Yeah.
you sing it?
I'll try. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you'll look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
You have a good voice.
Yeah, I used to sing. Um, no, but the thing that puzzles me about when my mother died, I saw her in the coffin, and her hair was so beautiful. She had on such a beautiful, it looked like a negligee, really. And I didn't know that I don't know how it didn't affect me when I saw her. And then I would go sit on the steps and look down through but I guess when you're that young, you just don't understand. And the day of the funeral, oh God, um, Nellie and Kay got to go to the funeral. Patsy and I didn't, and I was furious. They got new white dresses, and so a neighbor was minding Patsy and I, and she brought us the really big Dixie cups, and with ice cream, vanilla ice cream. That was fine.
Sorry, I've been working for a second. I just had to fix the microphone. when you were talking about the funeral, well, was she laid out in your house?
Yes, yes. And I'm not sure, Kay seems to think not, but in those days they used to lay people out for 3 days. And I asked Kay and she said, I don't think so. But there was a lot of people in our house that night, whenever it was jammed. I, yeah,
And you guys sat upstairs and you were looking through the
looking
door?
through the spokes on the railing. I think at that age you just keep looking, but you stop right there. You know, you don't really want to think that she's dead. You know, she's just lying there with her beautiful hair and terrible.
Can you remember her being sick?
Oh, yes, I do. I remember one Sunday, Daddy took us to the Oldbury Park, and Mother was in bed. And when we came home, she was very sick. Then I remember I had just started first grade in September. I remember in the morning before we went to school, there was a bedroom in the house where my aunts used to sleep when they came to visit. And I remember that my mother was in that bed, not in her own room. And they had this beautiful crucifix and all the things they do to give somebody extreme unction. You know, the time of death with oil, they do your forehead. And I kept thinking, oh, that's so pretty. And here my mother was dying, who knew? And there was a lot of people in there too, a lot of women. And I just kept thinking about that silver cross. But, yeah, that's about the last memory I have of her.
And how old were you?
I was 6 years old. Patsy was 5. And Ellie was 8 and Kay was 7. It's awful. But I don't have many more memories of my mother than that. Everyone says that I look just like her. And in fact, we had a family picnic, a reunion, and my cousins, I haven't seen for years, one of them came, looked at me and started to cry. I said, what's the matter? She said, you look just like my mother, who was Annie, my mother's favorite sister. That made me feel good. They said, oh, all of them, you look just like my mother. And then I remember going to the home because we all got new coats and hats. And I had a fur bowl right here. They were like little cloche hats. And I loved mine. Mine was green. Nellie's was orange, tweed. And that's the hat. I'm sure everybody knows this story in our family. Nellie's hat, we had gone to the zoo, and in those days they didn't have like fencing, well, there was fence, but pretty big spaces in between. And Nellie was standing by the fence with her hat in her hand, and a polar bear grabbed her damn hat. And nightmares, you could just think if he could grab her hat, he could have gotten her hand. Whew. But that's why I remember, because her hat was gone. And then, yes, you can't even explain what it feels like to be so young and don't have your mother. And going to the home was pretty traumatic for us. And we all sat on the floor and cried. Every time any of us got somebody would fight with us or something, then we all four of us get down and cry. And they'd say, the Mannings are crying again. But I had good times in the home. I really did. I went to first grade. I had started at Immaculate Conception. Then I went to first grade in the home when I got there. I loved it. The sisters, there was only like maybe first grade, only like 8 children in the room. And I remember that the sister had little ivory, she had a little ivory, what do you call Chinese, you know. Oh, what did they use? Ivory, made out of ivory, a little rickshaw, and she had other little ivory things. Oh, I thought they were terrific. They were beautiful. But I liked school all through the home because we had interesting teachers. The nuns were good, especially Sister Amelia. It was a real pain in the ass. But I remember her reading to us. We were about in 6th or 7th grade, and she read, marked, what is it? Tales of Two Cities. And she would read it every Thursday if, we got all our work done and all. And she really could read well, really. Then she used to say a poem, and everybody would have to do this, laughing. The Bells, did you ever hear the poem, The Bells? And she would say, and the bells, bells, bells. And next time, and the bells, bells. It was so funny. But she was a good teacher, and she wasn't really a teacher. She was born in Hartland. She didn't have much education at all. She didn't have a brogue anymore either. But she was a good teacher. We all liked when she taught us. And then another sister, she was kind of like scatty. And the kids put a turtle on her chair at the desk just to see what she would do, and she threw the damn thing out the window. She was terrified. That was funny. And this is the one, when we used to study what they called health in school. And when it would come to anything like the least bit sexual, at least, she would say, all the time, and we knew when this was going to happen, she'd say, now I don't want you to laugh. Don't start laughing. She was a trip. She was.
Would you laugh?
Yes, we'd do this. Try not to laugh. Oh, one time we had a little priest, who came to the school, to the home, and to teach us religion. It was like something really special, And one day, I don't know what started it, but all of us were laughing. We couldn't stop. It was like hysterical laughing. And he looked like, he's little. And he was jumping on the floor like Rumpelstiltskin. And he said, you orphans, you get everything for nothing, and that, oh. But it was funny. I had a handkerchief. I had stuffed in my mouth. I could not stop laughing. And nobody could stop when he kept saying, stop laughing. He never came back. Let's see.
Well, I just wanted to get back to when your mom died.
Yeah.
What do you remember what your father was like at that time?
Do you know? No, I don't. I was just thinking that the other night. I don't remember my father at all when my mother died. That's weird. I imagine he was, because he would take us out, for a movie or when we were in the home. And every time he brought us home, he'd say, who do you love best, Mammy or Daddy? And he called my mother Mammy. I guess we did too. They do. Instead of Mommy. Sounds like Al Jolson. And he would cry. Somebody even mentioned your name. He would pull up, and you get to know it. And you get when you're just so young to watch him, and hope and pray that nobody would mention my mother's name. And that's so hard when you think he's 33 years old and oh my, my father was the best.
You can talk about that.
Can I?
Yeah.
He was. He had this short man, stocky, and he walked with such a strut. You would know he was Irish. You would never think he was anything else. The way he walked, you know. And he was so good to us. My God. The poor man, I used to follow him around when he worked in the home, cutting the hedges. You had to get up on a big ladder and cut them. And here I am at the bottom of the ladder. And Daddy, guess what? And Daddy, 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 Daddy. And he never said, why don't you go play? Never, never, never. Even if he didn't hear me, he would do, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a great guy. And, of course, every Sunday he brought both papers when we had both papers. And I remember one time he was pretty smashed, and he brought the papers, and we were sitting on the hill with my dad. And when he left, one of the older girls who was sitting there said to me, "You know who makes your father drink? The nuns." And do you not know what a relief that was for me? I thought, oh. But I'll have to tell you this story about your mother, unless she told you. But I'm not supposed to say that, am I? Oh.
Say whatever you want.
When we lived at Schubert's, your mom and I lived at Schubert's, your mother, I think it was, she didn't get a great report card. And Daddy came over, and he was saying, "What, bad report card?" and, stuff like that. And then he hit her like that on her leg, and he left. And in about a half hour, he came back with a hoagie and a new pair of stockings. And she was the bride. He was crazy about her. Yeah. And she was great in the home, your mom.
Maybe you, instead of saying my mom, you can say Patsy.
Oh, okay. Shall I say it again?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No. Patsy. I mean, say the whole thing over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm trying not to talk too much, but I should talk more.
Patsy was great in the home. And she was, I forget what I said, but I think she had more fun than anybody in the home. She was so active. She never, I used to wake up on a rainy day and feel as happy as anything. I could stay in and read all day. Not her. Out in the snow, down that dangerous hill with about 5 or 6 kids jumping on her. Oh my God. But she always had fun. She was, she was sportsy like me. Mm. And Kay was and is very independent, very angry. But she's a great businesswoman. If anybody needed their checkbook, even though how messy it was, Kay could do it. Kay could straighten it. She used to straighten mine. So, yeah. And Nellie. Nellie was always the sweetest thing. And we all read, but Nellie read when she was, I remember in the morning, and they had big sinks in the home, and we each had a place to stand. Nellie would have a book, her glass balancing the book and washing herself and reading. But we all love to read. Thank God they all do. All of us do.
So do you remember the first day you went to the home?
Yes, I do. I don't remember it well. Nellie remembers it, but I don't remember it well. All I remember is that we got new coats and hats. That was a big deal. And I remember sitting in the corridor, the four of us, and crying. And it was so bewildering now. It's so big and so many people, so many girls. It was really frightening. And Patsy, poor little Patsy, and there was a girl there who had like a half a finger. And Patsy, I mean, she was sitting on the swings, and this girl kept coming over to her. She had a piece of bread, and she wrapped it around her half finger, and she said to Patsy, "Well, hot dog." And Patsy was crying and crying. It was hard, and nobody. I think Patsy then was the youngest one there. Yeah. Well, I don't know. You somehow or other, in a short time, you just fit in. I wasn't crazy about everything, but I really don't have many complaints. The nuns who hit people, like Kay, imagine what that nun did to her, dragging her down the flight of stairs by her hair.
Tell me that story.
Kay was, we had this new house, and the old house was over there. And Kay was over in the old house, and she was hanging out there, and the sister said that she was flirting with boys. She wasn't flirting with boys. She don't know how to flirt with boys. We didn't know from boys. And Kay, she said, "You go up," whatever told her to go up the clothes room. And Kay said no. So she pulled her down a whole flight of steps by her hair. They're the cruel things, that happen. And I wonder if anybody would be able to take care of kids like us and not do something like that. When they drive you nuts, I don't know. I don't know if I could even. I don't think I'd drag anybody by their hair, but it's a hard job. And
did you have any nuns that you liked?
I loved a nun called Sister Esther. And
what did you like about her?
She was little, and she was pretty, and she had these gorgeous sisters who came with fur coats, and it was like their hair was really like something like this, blondes. Oh, I used to love them to come look at their shoes and their dresses. But besides that, she was so sweet. And I remember one morning, she came up to wake us up, and she said, "Oh, it really smells in here." And I said, "This is from when I was a kid. First dog smells their own dirt." I didn't know that that's kind of an insult. But she was really cute. Sister Amelia was the bane of my existence. She liked me. And I know the reason was because I was in all the plays and I sang. And I think she was interested. I know she was interested in that. She used to give me a pain because I was already in the home. When I got to be, 6, I started right away with the singing and all. The other kids didn't like me because I was on the stage and I got dresses made and blah, blah, blah. And then to top it all off, Sister Amelia made it 10 times worse for me. When I had my tonsils out, I forget how old I was, she said to me, I was in bed, and she said to me, "Would a little bit of ice cream feel good on your throat?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." I didn't know she was going to do this. She woke up the nun who takes care of the kitchen, and that was, big show-off Mary Magdalene. That's what they call me. "You big show-off." And the sister was furious that it was just to get ice cream for me. So things like that, like, oh, just made it 10 times worse. Because that was my name practically, show off. Kids can't understand. But, another thing, one day in the home, this woman worked in the kitchen. She was a little tiny woman. And it's so sad because nobody knows where she came from. She was in the home when we got there, and she died while we were there. But nobody knows where she was born. Like maybe the sisters, the nuns do, but nobody knew anything. And she didn't like me at all. And I would go into the kitchen once in a while, and she'd come over to me, like sidle over, and like this. Get out of here, you lazy thing. Every time I went in. That's another thing. That's what they call me, Lazy Mary. You are the laziest girl. And I guess I was. I just could have stayed all day reading, and nobody bothered me, but you can't do that in a home with about 100 girls. But there were so many girls that you could play with or even just talk to. And then everybody, when we came home from school, when we were in high school, we had a playroom. And first thing we did was go in and turn on the radio to the 950 Club and dance. Nobody knew how to dance. None of us dance. Patsy can dance, but the rest I think it's because we're too inhibited. I really do. You have to break loose.
Would you dance with each other there?
Mostly you dance with the doorknob. Hold on to the doorknob. Try to get that, I think your mom, oh no, I can't say that. Okay.
You can say that.
I think your dad helped your mom to learn how to dance. Mm-hmm. He was a great dancer. Let me see. Oh, and food. I hated the food. I really did. It was horrible. Lamb stew with fat, little bit of meat, fat, little bit of meat. Disgusting. And, but on Thursdays we had scrapple. I love the scrapple. And I ate everybody's who didn't want theirs. A lot of the kids didn't like it. And I don't know. I liked the breakfast, but we had our dinner at lunch. And then a fruit and whatever at dinner. Not dinner, I guess it was lunch. And I used to wait every Friday for the high school kids to get their lunches. They never took, when they had peanut butter, they left them all over, on windowsills. Okay.
So, do you think, back to your mom, I just wanted to know do you think if they had more money or they would have had access to better health care? Do you think being
Oh,
know,
yeah.
hard out?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Because my mother had, she was so anemic that it was really bad anemia. And what they did was to tell her to eat a lot of liver. And then she had this congenital heart defect that nobody knew about. And then having 5 children in such a short space of time, I'm sure that was just too hard on her heart. And I remember, I have such a great memory of this. Standing in the kitchen, it was on a cold day. My mother had me standing on a stool, and it must have been when I started school. She was dressing me, and on the oven she made oatmeal, and it was like in a double boiler. There's, the more you think, the more you can remember, usually. And I'm glad I remember that, because I remember that very clearly, very clearly. And I remember one time about my mother, my father came home from work, and he was staggering all over the place. And I could, just picture my mother. And then he started to laugh. He was kidding. I never felt such relief in my life because she smiled, and you don't realize how close you are to your mother until you get older and understand. But all the kids in the home had the same problem we did. They didn't have, some of them had both parents, but most of them didn't. And it's put us all together in a home, all the motherless children. And I don't think that I minded the home much because I got a lot of attention from other people. Because I sang and was in all the shows, and Aunt Patsy and Aunt Kay were, Patsy was Dopey in Snow White. I forget, and Kay was Grumpy, I think, yeah. And I was Snow White. And when priest, the old lady gave me the apple, and they put a big screen in front of me, and it's like a cot to lie down on while I'm supposed to be dead. And I was picking my nose back behind the screen like anything. And then after the show, kids were saying to me, "We saw you picking your nose." It was so funny. I didn't think it was funny then. I was really embarrassed. And
How old were you when you were Snow White?
I guess I was about 12 years old. And we had a lot of fun. But Patsy and Kay also, in another show, they sang this song together. "I'm can, who makes things go." And your mother was, "I'm can, who says no, no." And I loved doing that. I used to go to communion breakfasts for older women, and sing for them. It was great. I enjoyed it. Although I got such horrible reaction from the kids in the home. But somehow I think if I really didn't want to do it, like I would think, "Oh, I have to do that again," I wouldn't do it. And so I know that I'm older, that I loved it. It was great. And I had the lead in the senior play when I went to high school. I was Lady Catherine. It was about the poet Francois Villon. And I loved that too. We had fun. I had so many distractions that my other sisters didn't have. It wasn't just the same old thing all the time. But I still, it's hard when you don't have a mother. I mean, you don't know how much you miss a mother. Who's going to tell you how to buy potatoes? Who knew potatoes came 5 pounds? Because when I went shopping, when I first got married, I knew from nothing. And this little store around me where I used to go, there was always ladies in there, and they taught me. You buy a 5 pound bag. Oh, the other one.
I'm just going to turn that off, sorry. Just wait a couple seconds. Camera powers up. Okay.
The women who came to the store, the older woman, older than me, they told me how to buy potatoes and just buy as many apples as you want. I didn't know. You didn't know anything at all. Then they were great. And they'd pick out the meat for me. Yes, I did learn from them.
Did you feel lost?
When I was married, or?
When you got out of the home?
Oh, yes, definitely. They put the girls out as soon as they finished high school. These girls didn't have an education. They went to commercial school, which teaches them how to type and take stenography. And they were just That's it. You're on your own. And I remember the two kids who left, and I liked these two. They were nice kids. And I heard later that they were both were pregnant and no husband, and somewhere, I don't know where they were. And these two kids didn't have any parents. They had nobody, nothing. It, it boggles my mind. Thank God for my father, because he's the one who took care of us. And if we didn't have him, I don't know. Most of those children, their parents, if they had parents, would come to visit on Sunday. And there was a lot of divorced people who put the children there. It wasn't just for orphans. Half orphans, that's what we used to call ourselves. I'm not an orphan, I'm a half orphan. Because that's what we said. You orphan, shut up, you orphan, when somebody said something to us. When I think, can I tell you a story about Bobby?
Sure.
My nephew, Bobby, is a Down syndrome child. And Nellie and I took him to see Ghostbusters. And somebody, maybe Bill Murray was really acting up, and he whispered in my ear, "He's a retard. He's a retard." And they're not allowed to say that. Where he was, the school where he was, nobody was allowed to call each other a retard. So that's why he whispered in my ear. He is the cutest kid.
And it made you think of when you were kids and in college?
Yes, right. That's true. He is, well, I don't know. I miss my mother in ways that, I just, not for what she did for me or anything, just that you had nobody to talk to in the home. Nobody at all. During the war, I was terrified. I thought every night when I went to sleep that there might be an air raid that they might come over and have an air raid. And they had blackout curtains on all the windows in the dormitories and all. And I was so scared. I wouldn't listen to the news. If I got a paper, I wouldn't read the news. If you just had somebody to say, "Don't worry about it, it'll be all right, they won't come over here," whatever they told you. But you had nobody. They're the kind of things that I missed a lot.
Would you and your sisters talk to each other if you were scared or you needed advice or things like that?
No. Mm-mm. When we got to the home, after we were settled in there, I don't know if I saw my sisters every day even, because I was with my classmates. My best friend was Aggie. I was with her all the time. And that's how it was. You just from your class, you picked your friends. So, no, it wasn't like we were before, like this close, No, it wasn't at all like that. And
What about when you went to sleep? Were you guys all in the same?
yes, they had two dormitories, the upper dormitory and the lower dormitory. And there was about, I guess, 50 beds in each dormitory. And when you're in 6th grade, 7th grade, you go up to the upper one. And, what should I want to say? Patsy used to get in bed with me because she was frightened. She was so young. And sleep beside me. I never even felt her there, Then one night, she got into my bed, and I could feel the heat coming from her. She was so feverish. And a nun came over and made her get out of my bed. How could she do that? What the hell did she think was going to happen? She was so sick. That's the kind of thing. It's all coldness and do what I say, and just, that was a bit much in the home. It was hard to have your own thoughts because everything was related to religion. Every single thing. To me it was, anyhow. And I really didn't need that. Oh, I loved I can't say I was religious, but I was what? Not all the time, not going to so many times to mass and so early in the morning. They'd wake us up. Oy. Um, and we all hated getting up. No, not Patsy and Kay. Nellie and I. And Nellie, and I guess I did too. Oh my God. Waking me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But we used to have oh, this is funny. We each had a chair by our bed where we would put our clothes over the chair. So one night in the dormitory, somebody said, I forget who, when I say go, everybody move your chair. Just move it a little bit. And we did. And it's 50 people doing that. And the nuns had they called them cells with no ceilings. They were open. And then we did it, and the nun was yelling, "Who's doing that?" So we did it again. It was funny. We were hysterical. But that was fun. Lots of things were fun because it was like us against the nuns.
Can you think of any other examples of when it was you against the nuns?
God, it happened so often that I don't even. Let me think. I remember a big incident with the nuns. I was 17 years old, and I guess I was getting more whatever. I had never been a girl who got in trouble, rarely fought, did my homework and everything by the book. And this one day at lunchtime, well, the fact is we had gotten girls and nuns from another home. And here I am, not a penny in the world, and I'm snobby. I didn't like them. They were rough. Their voices were like that. They just were so different. And two of those sisters who came with those girls were serving lunch. And they had it on, we used to call it a cookie pusher, a cart, to push the food through to the refectory. And all of a sudden she said, "No one is getting served until I have absolute silence in this place." Well, we weren't used to being treated like that. It's like you're really in a home, And I picked up a fork and I started tapping on a glass. Tap, tap, tap. And she said, "Stop that." And I didn't. I just did it again. I can't believe I did that. That made me feel good. And then she said, "Get out of here, Mary Manning." So I opened the door and I slammed it real hard. And I was walking down the hall, and all of a sudden, somebody tackles me. I'm on the floor. She had me against this pipe, banging my head. Oh, the pipe wasn't real big, like that. And I mean, she tackled me. She really did. And then your mother, oh God, I'm sorry. Then Patsy came tearing out of the refectory. "You let my sister alone." And then she was jumped on her back and hit her and knocked her cornet off. And one of our nuns, Sister Angela, told somebody to go get my dad. And when my dad came in, he said, "Get off that child." She was still had me on the floor. And we had to leave that night. Patsy and I had to leave. Mm-hmm. And I did enjoy the freedom. Like, it was when we did leave. It was, but the thing is, you didn't learn anything about life, about how to take care of money, about anything that you really need in your life. And we didn't even know how to buy shades when we got married. How do people do this? How do people buy curtains? What is a good material? Nothing like that. That you definitely need it if you're going to be a housewife, which we were. And that was a shame. They taught us to sew, if you can call it that. There was a woman on crutches. She was crippled. Nobody knew where she came from either. They lived there all of their lives. And they had a room outside the infirmary. 4 of them lived there, these 4 women who were like lost souls. Lost souls. And anyhow, she was the sewing lady, the one who was crippled. And I asked her one time, oh God, I was so embarrassed. I asked her how to sew a button on. And everybody got hysterical. Like, don't you know it's got 4 holes? You just, I said, why did I ask her? Yeah, Lizzie. She really didn't like me either. Every day. We used to come from the classrooms down to the refectory to get our lunch. And it seemed like every week she was after me. Mary Manning, where's your underwear? She's the one who collected. We had to get our names on the underwear and everything. And you threw them in a pile on the floor when you took a bath. And where's your underwear, Mary Manning? I said, I put it in the pile. I used to hate to see her. Oh, man. She was such a crank. And
So when you got out of the home and you were trying to figure out how to do all of these everyday,
yes, it was difficult. It was difficult. And not to even know what to buy, like for furniture and all. I bought a lipstick red sofa. God. I wouldn't have bought it if I had somebody to tell me what, you don't do that. What did they call it? The kids got throw up all over it. And it didn't go, the spots would stay, the water spots. So that was a bad move. But it's just very, very difficult. And you don't know how to cook at all. So what do? You burn the roast because you think that they were like that in the home, so this must be how they're supposed to be. Dry. It's not like you were eating the heel of your shoe. And all that. We didn't have a clue how to cook. Well, then when we had our own apartments, we cooked. We invited a friend of ours' father for dinner, and Kay went down. I think we all went down the Reading Terminal. And Kay asked for a 5-pound turkey. That would be free. They were huge. And they all laughed at her. So she got a chicken. And we cleaned it and we took all the meat out of it. It was not the skin. And the legs were still there. All the meat was out. And the poor man came, we didn't have anything for him to eat. It was funny though. I loved the apartments too that we had. We had fun. We had Mills. Mills is my husband. And before we got married, we lived in an apartment, my sisters and I. And Mill invited people. He was born in Yonkers, and he still had friends in Yonkers. And he invited them over for a weekend to his house. And they were coming in on the train. And I said, oh, we'll make a nice breakfast for them, to have something to eat. And we went to so much trouble. The place was gleaming. And they sat down to eat, and this one fella threw up in his plate. That right in the plate. And we were all hysterical. You try to say, oh, yeah, be sorry. Yeah, that was fun too. Nellie used to get teased because Nellie loved to sleep when we were in the apartments. And Kay used to knock on the wall. Nellie, are you awake? Please don't do that, And let's see, what else did she do to her? But she just got teased. And Patsy, borrowed Kay's suit that she was going to get married in, and when she brought, Kay didn't know she had done it. When she brought it back, it had some lipstick on it, and Kay, when she found out, was beside herself. So that night, she was screaming at Patsy, and it was such a hullabaloo. And I was watching everything, and all of a sudden I hear this little voice, Patsy, Mayor, could you please get me an Anacin? It sounded, so funny. She's getting beat to hell. And she's, Mayor, like this little weak voice, which is no more like her than flying. It struck me so funny. We had great nights. I remember Kay and I slept in the living room, a bed on each side. And I can still remember lying there and listening to the radio and listening to a Joe Louis fight. Everybody loved Joe Louis, so I don't even like boxing, but I used to listen to Joe Louis. And the guys from downstairs in this one apartment, they came up. They asked us out. And the night I answered the door when the fella came and asked if I wanted to go to the movies or anything, I was engaged. And we laughed at everything. We were not very good about not laughing at things. And the poor fella, and I was hysterical. So all I could do was get behind the door and show him my ring. And then when he'd leave, everybody, oh my God, what are those guys? They are really, they were kind of goofy. And of course, your mother had a boyfriend. I just said it again. Patsy had a boyfriend. What was his name?
Ernie?
Ernie, yeah. And Kay, she was the best tease. And Ernie would come, and Kay would say when he left, oh, Ernie, I love you, only you. And he was late one time. Kay said, maybe he got hair like this, Maybe he got his hair caught in the door. Things that were just so funny.
And would my mother laugh?
Yes, oh yeah. I love you, only you. And the guys used to come over, Franny and Mill, and they were always late. Always late. And Kay, she used to say to me, if you laugh when I'm yelling at Franny, you better not laugh. But I always laughed because he was funny and she was funny. And Mill just went along, Mr. Quiet.
Would you go on double dates?
Yes, often. Yeah, most of the time, in fact, really. But we waited one time out in Germantown for them. They were supposed to meet us. Oh, I bet it was an hour and a half. So we went home. They were in the bar. But Franny Leonard was funny. He was. We had a lot of good times. Now back to the home.
Well, so what about Schubert's? Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. We lived with a woman named Schubert and her 2 sons. Her husband was in the Army. Jack was his name, nice guy. And we didn't, it was when people were able to put money or buy things and put it on the eye. And we got things that we never had in the home. We got the Kaiser rolls for one, which I never tasted in my life. And her father used to make great spaghetti sauce. And the cursingest man I ever saw in my life. Even the little kids were going around, Jesus, his grandchildren. I liked him. He's really skinny. Kitty was very nice. She really was. She had no money. She had in order to do her wash, she put a big wash tub on a big chair. Well, we did that too. We did with the scrubbing board. And she really didn't have anything. And Patsy and I, we cleaned the room we were in. We had to scrub the rug, and it was the dirt under it was just encrusted. I think they used to call them a Crex rug. It was had holes in it, like a summer rug. That's what they used them for. Buckets and buckets of black water. And Jack came home, and the kids were adorable. We loved the kids. And her husband came home, and then we had to move. Jack was a very nice man, really nice guy. And then we went to, I think it was Mary O'Donnell's. And that was our favorite place, Mary's. Her husband was also, he was in the Navy. And she took us both in, and she had children of her own. And we didn't have to do much. It was just like living in your own house, you know. It was so easygoing, Mary was. She never gave us a rough time. And her husband, Joe, oh, he was so good. He was a great guy. And I remember he came home on a leave while we were there. And I remember us sitting all around the table, and Mary brought out a can with Gouda cheese, a big Gouda. I had never seen that before. And that red skin, that fascinated me. You know, and it's only wax, right? And a box of crackers. And I remember thinking to myself, this is terrific. Because, you know, that's what families do. And it's something that you miss when you're raised away from your parents. Really. So, and it was so hard on Daddy, too. He came to see us when we were living, no matter what apartment we were in. He would always come to see us. And the day he came over on a Saturday afternoon and told us he was getting married. And Patsy, she better treat you right. She's crying. And then their wedding was,
Sorry.